Hi, my name is Adam Garrett, Realtor with Garrett Realty Partners, and today I wanted to go over the current real estate market in Hampton Roads. And in case you're unfamiliar with Hampton Roads is the area of Southeast Virginia that makes up places like Virginia Beach, Gloucester, Newport News, Norfolk, etc. These colored sections on the map. And in order to help with what we're going over today, I wanted to look at my How's the Market page on my website that is a good way to look at some of the cyclical things as well as some of the macro things that have happened with the market over the past decade or so. And what we see typically in terms of the cyclical nature of the market is that the market goes up and down, and in a similar fashion, whether it's going down or whether it's going up. Now, the market is on a whole going up in part because you have just the aspect of inflation. And so, with inflation, impacting the value of the US dollar, that's the number one thing that makes the market go up gradually over time, even though there are factors that have a greater influence on the market than inflation on a micro level. For instance, in the past year or two, we've seen some of the highest inflation that we've seen in a very long time. And yet, the market has gone up at a higher level than the level of inflation. And so it's not just due to inflation, there are a lot of other factors, and we'll get into some of that later. But so June these June peaks that you see, where in most cases there's a peak in June for a seasonal summer peak, those peaks are the median sales prices primarily from contracts that get ratified or begin 1 month prior. And likewise, these January lows that we see are primarily from December contracts. And this is data looking from 2009 to 2021. And there's different aspects of things, but we see that the median sales prices have gone up over the course of the past few years. And here you see it going back from 2008, 2009, when the bubble popped. And we'll get into my thoughts on if we are actually in a bubble right now or not. But these are just some of the macro things to know about. Also, median days on the market. Right now, we have the lowest median days on market that we've had in over a decade in our area. And there's a lot of additional information on this website that you're welcome to check out. I'll include a link in the description. As we're talking about REIN MLS, pulling data from REIN MLS, here are some of these cities that we're looking at, whether it's on the south side, the peninsula, or on the middle peninsula, Gloucester, where REIN is the most dominant. And like I said, even if you're looking in Williamsburg and James City County, where Williamsburg is based out of, REIN still has more for the combined Williamsburg and James City County than the Williamsburg MLS itself, as you can see here. And now I wanted to go over some of the aspects of October of this year versus November of this year, and also November last year versus November of this year. And the primary one to pay attention to is the ones on the left here, because these here are highly impacted by those seasonal fluctuations. That said, when you look at median sales price, it's basically the same now as it was in September. You've got no difference. Settled sales are down a little bit, and again, it's the cyclical pattern that happens. And with year over year, they're up by 3.3% this year, November versus last year, November. And going back to the sales prices, they're also up by 5.4%. And if we go to the median days on market, they haven't changed at all of this month versus last month, whereas it's gone down by 12.5% last year, November versus this year, November. Active listings have also gone down both year over year and month over month. And the median sold price per square feet went up slightly month over month and much more significantly year over year by 11.3%. The new listings we see have gone up year over year while going down in the cyclical fashion that they do. And the average percentage of list price in the cyclical fashion, like typical, it's gone down by, in this case, 0.4%, whereas the year over year, it's gone up by 0.7%. In terms of the inventory, month over month and year over year, that's gone down. And next, I wanted to show you something that is a pretty useful tool, and that is found on Zillow. And in order to find it, it's not all that user-friendly to find it. And so one more user-friendly way to do it is just to go to google.com and just do a Google search for Zillow area values and then whatever zip code you would like. Now, keep in mind that some of these are going to be they're going to be visible, providing a one-year projection, this one-year forecast, whereas other ones might only show the past one-year change. And also keep in mind that in zip codes that are less populous, there might not be any Zillow projection for the one-year forecast. Another thing to keep in mind is that this is visible on a desktop, whereas if you're using a phone, you won't be able to see this one-year forecast. And Zillow has got a line here for what that kind of looks like, but keep in mind that this isn't really thinking more in terms of month to month, but more that annualized sort of approach. And so what I've done here is just pulled some of those numbers in order to be able to go through some of the different options within that REIN Hampton Roads area. And so we've got Gloucester around 8% for each of the zip codes available for it. With King William, we're looking closer to 9.4%. And Matthews, and we've got between about 8 and 11%. And in some cases, again, you don't have any projection. And you do have this one case of 11.6. And then you've got also this case here of 7.9 and 7.4 in Matthews. But for the most part, between 8 and 12%. And if we go down further, a lot of places don't have a projection that are more rural. Charles City, we've got 9.3%. In Hampton, we're mostly hovering around 10%. James City County, we've got around 9% in a number of places there. And New Kent County, you've also got around 9%. Newport News, it's hovering closer to 10% for the most part, with this one oddball in 23607 that's 17.9%. And in Pocosin, we're looking at around 7.7%. And this is, again, we're looking at the one-year projections as of today. And in York County, we've got around 9%, 10%. Chesapeake, it's mostly hovering around 10 to 11%. In Isle of Wight, we've got 8.7 to 8.9%, although you've got some closer to 8% as well. In Norfolk, we're mostly around, it's kind of varied just because you've got so many zip codes, but generally you're looking at between 7.5 and 11% and some change. In Portsmouth, you've got mostly around 11 to 12%. In Suffolk, you're looking between 9.5 and 11%. And in Virginia Beach, you're looking mostly between 9 or 10%, up to 10.5% here. And that's it as far as those go. And so I did want to just point out some of the other macro stuff that we've been experiencing recently. And one of the things we've had happen is that there's been a big shift out of the office and into remote work. And so there are some more rural locations that have experienced a lot of sales. Also, with office complexes, the market, at least initially, went down for those to a more significant degree than for residential when COVID hit. And there really has been a just a big increase in the amount of remote work, as you likely know, and that's impacted the home prices just because the amount of people that are working remotely, the home matters more. It's a lot more people didn't have an office then that wanted to get an office in order to be able to ride out COVID better. And also, it's not just a COVID thing with this remote work. There's some companies where they previously wouldn't even consider allowing people to do remote work, whereas now they were kind of forced to do it because of COVID, and a lot of them are just reconsidering their rules about what it'll be like after COVID, and it'll be a lot more flexible, in my opinion, and I believe it's reality for a lot of people to be able to do more remote work on a more long-term basis. For any company that has seen the idea of remote work being something that could really be profitable. And also, I go a little bit more into just the idea of us being in a bubble right now in this July 26th post. I'll provide a link in the description of this video, but um, basically, I think one of the reasons why I believe we're not in a bubble right now is the fact that, like I said, inflation is helping to drive the train of the appreciation that we've seen. And in addition to that, you've got a time now versus then where you had just this very high volume of risky mortgages in 2008 and 2006, et cetera. Whereas right now you don't have, you've got less than 20% of those in 2020. So 376 billion in mortgage originations had less than 620 FICO score in 2006, whereas in 2020 it was only 74 billion. So that's less than 20%. So that gives you a little bit of idea, but I go a lot more in depth and detail about that. You also have a housing shortage now, whether you're looking to rent or you're looking to buy, whereas back then that simply wasn't the case. You had lots of homes, the market was flooded with all these investors who weren't able to afford their loans. You had looser regulations on lending than you do now, where people that really couldn't afford the properties that they were purchasing for investment purchases were able to buy them because they weren't showing the documentation and they didn't need to for the loans that they were using. You had lots of people doing interest-only loans, essentially banking on appreciation, and it just was a recipe for disaster. Whereas right now, you've had increased regulations, you have a housing shortage, unlike what you had then, and you're just in a very different situation. The thing I wanted to briefly touch on is the interest rates, because a lot of people that are purchasing are going to be using a mortgage, and this is a very important factor to consider. So and most people are going to be using the 30-year loan, and so that's what we'll be focusing on here. As you can see from December's low, there's definitely been an increase in the mortgage rates, and there's projected to be a further increase from what they are right now. If you look at the historic numbers for interest rates, what we have available right now is just this incredible option that you have not had historically. And so the people that are able to purchase now are definitely in a good position to do that in terms of interest rates. Now, there's a lot more to it than just looking at the market and looking at the interest rates than if it's actually a good time for you to buy. So I go into that some in my best time to buy a home page, but I wanted to just focus on the market for this video. So I hope that that is helpful. And if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Thank you.